Welcome to Physics Made Easy channel, and we are resuming our lectures after a gap of about 2 months. And again, we shall be uploading our lectures on theory, numerical, NCERT problems as well as MCQs. And today's topic is communication. And I'm going to start with communication directly. First, what is communication? Communication, it consists of two very important steps. In communication, one step of communication is transmission, and other step of communication is reception. So what is transmitted and what is received is information. It means communication involves transmission and reception of information. Now, in modern times, the term communication refers to transmitting, receiving, and then processing. Processing part is very important. Information is not transmitted in raw form, or it is also not received in raw form. Many changes take place through the electronic circuitry. Now, communication is the process by which information is transferred from source to destination. Information is transferred from source to destination. One point is source point and the other point is the destination point. For example, if I have to draw a diagram, now assume this box to be the source of information. This box is the transmitter, and then this information is, you can say, communicated through some media, and after being communicated through media, this box represents media. I will just write M. M means media, and this is the transmitter which transmits the information. And thus, then after traveling through the media, it reaches the receiver R. And now I shall be writing this receiver as R. T is transmitter, M is medium, and R is receiver. Now, information is not transmitted in the form of the very basic signal. For example, it is not transmitted in the form of sound. Some kind of a typical process known as modulation takes place. By modulation, we transmit the information, and modulation and many other processes. Some of them we will take up in this chapter, and others you will read in engineering. And now, the final signal to be transmitted is fed to the medium, and after traveling through the medium, it reaches the receiver. A lot of processes goes on the side of the transmitter, and again a lot of processes they go on the side of the receiver, and there is also a kind of feedback mechanism that we will also highlight. Now, what is basically transmitted? Anything can be transmitted. A piece of information can be transmitted, news can be transmitted, or a speech can be transmitted. As in our common life, we talk on a telephone, we just transmit our voices. Basic piece information is just a news or something that we want to convey or that we want to transmit. Information is, it is just a news or something that we want to transmit. It is the news or the information. It may be your voice, maybe your masses. Masses, what is masses? Masses is the physical manifestation of information produced. Masses is information produced by the source. It appears in the form of discrete symbols. It may appear in the form of symbols. And these symbols may be time varying quantities. The masses is made up of time varying quantities. Signal. It is the electrical signal message. Signal is basically electrical signal message. It can also be electronic. Electrical signal of the masses at the source. The device converts a physical message into an electrical message. For example, when we speak, there are microphone. It converts our sound signal into the electrical signal. And the device which converts one form of energy into another form of energy, in this case particularly sound signal or any other physical quantity, may even be the video signal, the device which converts a signal into an electrical signal is called transducer. Transducer. The output of a transducer, we can say, is an electrical signal. Its input can be any physical quantity. It can even be the stress. We have the solids. If we apply stress to them, then electrical energy or the vibrations are generated, which can be converted into electrical signal. Clearly, electrical signal now contains the information. Signal may be defined. What is signal? It is a single in terms of mathematics. It's a single valued function which varies with the time. It may be voltage, for example. It may be voltage or it can be anything else. Now, essential parts of communication. This question is very much important basically from theory point of view and not much from the competition point of view. And in fact, this particular lecture is made for the theory students, is more useful for the theory students. For competition students, the next topic is very important. Now, communication system. This is setup used to transmit information from one point to another point is called communication system. The essential part of communication system is transmitter, communication channel. It may be wire, it may be atmosphere, it may be any other medium, and then the receiver. Third part is the receiver. Now, if we will focus on the block diagram, then things will become very easy for us. This is the block diagram. First, we have got a source of information. Source of information, I mean to say, it can be any signal, maybe a sound signal, or it may be even a video signal. We have got a message signal. This signal is fed to the transmitter now. Transmitter processes this signal and gives the output as a transmitted signal or a signal which is worth transmitting. Now this signal is transmitted to the channel. In channel, there noise can be added to this transmitted signal. This noise is something that we want to avoid. And now, after this part, so here this is the noise. Noise we want to avoid. We don't need noise. And noise is basically something unwanted. So this signal is transmitted through the channel. Addition of noise, we want to avoid it, and then when this signal reaches the receiver, receiver receives the signal. Now this is a signal which is not in the form of exactly information. Now from receiver, electronic processes or computational processes will take place, and finally we will get the message signal, and user will use the message signal. If he wants, he can give feedback. Even he can give feedback to the source of information if two people are communicating. Whether feedback is required or not required, it's a matter of the application. So the basic element of the communication system is transmitter, channel, and receiver, and also information source, and then the final, the useful information or the user information that is to be shared or is to be received or used up. Now, what is transmitter? Transmitter is a setup which transmits the signal. It's a setup which transmits the signal, you can say. Transmitter is a setup, for example, it's a setup which transmits the signal. And particularly, it's a setup. First, what it does, it transmits the signal. It transmits the signal or the message to the receiving end. And now, what is the intermediary between the receiver and the transmitter is communication channel. Now, the main function of the transmitter It receives the message signal or the information to be sent, and then it converts it into a suitable form so that we can transmit it on the uh, channel. Now, if we refocus on this diagram, information source gives us the message signal. Message signal cannot be directly transmitted to the channel. Message signal is given to the transmitter. Transmitter processes it, and then we finally get a transmitted signal. This transmitted signal is fed to the channel. So transmitter, it receives a message signal and gives the output in the form of a signal to be transmitted, which is then onward is fed to a channel. And the next part is communication channel or the transmission media. This is something very much important. As I have already told you that this channel, first, what is the communication channel or the medium? It is the physical path that has to be traversed between the transmitter and receiver. Now, it carries modulated wave. Now, what is a modulated wave? This will be covered in the coming lectures. Now, basic signal is received by the transmitter. It modulates that signal, and finally, the modulated signal is transmitted from the source to the receiver. Now, what is the basic role of the communication channel? It receives a signal to be transmitted, and then faithfully it carries the signal up to the receiver, and then receiver receives the signal. And now the most important medium of communication can be what? For example, the most important communication medium may be a transmission line, or it can be an optical fiber, or it may be a free space. For example, video communication or telecommunication, the signals that you see in your television channels, they are put to space directly and they are reflected back by the ionosphere. When the information signal propagates along the channel, some unwanted signal may add it. Note that this signal is unwanted, which is noise. With the development of technology, now this noise has been reduced to a great extent in our communication channels. Next important part is the receiver. A receiver is a setup that receives the transmitted signal. Now this receiver, basically its duty is to receive the transmitted signal and then convert the transmitted signal into the message signal. Now what a receiver receives is a modulated wave, means wave converted into a transmitted form, or you can say the basic source of information converted into a transmittable form. Now, if we look into this diagram, this is the message signal. It is converted into transmittable signal. Now, this transmittable signal is transmitted by the channel. Now, this received signal is what that is transmitted. Received signal is different from the message signal. Now, the role of this receiver is to receive the transmitted signal, then convert it into the message signal so that the final message signal can be used by the user. So this was the function. Now the basic process, the most important process that takes place on the site of a transmitter is basically modulation. I will just write it by MOD. Modulation takes place here. And here noise is added. Some kind of filtration process to separate the noise may also take place here. And then here the process demodulation, reverse of modulation. Demodulation, demod takes place here. Modulation converts the message signal into a transmittable signal, and receiver converts the transmitted signal into the original message signal. Additional job given to the receiver is the removal of the noise. Now, there are two basic modes of communication. One is point-to-point communication. Point-to-point communication is, in this kind of communication, first connection is set up between the transmitter and receiver. It goes over a link. It is not just like a ladder method. Now there are two methods. One method is point to point, as is telephone system or mobile system. Whenever we have to talk with someone, we just dial the phone number. First, link between the source of information and the receiver of the information is established. That is, first link is established and then communication starts. The basic example of this is telephony. Telephony is a very good example of this process. So telephony is the basic process, and then broadcast mode. In broadcast mode, information is just broadcast. It is just transmitted and receiver receives it. And in this case, link is not established before transmission. In point-to-point communication, link is established before transmission. In broadcast method, link is not established before transmitted. Information is just broadcast. It is received. Now the basic message is, you can just say radio communication or television communication. For example, when you are attending this lecture, thousands of the signals may be moving in your room. When you will switch on your radio, you can receive many radio stations. And if you switch on your television, then you will be able to receive more than 500 channels. Maybe channels may run in hundreds or in thousands. Now the channels, TV channels or the radio communication, it's a broadcast method. Another method is point-to-point communication. That is telephony that you use in your mobile phones. When you take a call, first the connection is established. Once your call is picked up by the receiver, then communication starts. Point-to-point communication, connection established before communication. Broadcast method, connection is not required to be established before communication. Example is radio and television. With these words, I finish this lecture. And in my very next lecture, I shall be covering the basic terminology. Thank you very much.